Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill. Nebraska's defense shows up in a massive way Saturday afternoon against Rutgers, and I think what stands out to me about this win, it was nowhere near pretty. I think a lot of Nebraska fans certainly know that. That's what you get when you play Rutgers. Like when you talk about Rutgers, they don't win pretty, but they win a lot of football games. My biggest takeaway is when the moment mattered the most, Nebraska made the plays to win. You talk about red zone. You talk about on third downs. You talk about creating turnovers. That's something that we're just not used to saying about this Nebraska team against Rutgers. We kind of knew this is how the game would go. Like it wasn't going to be a blowout in either direction. It was going to be about making big time plays in big time moments. That's what this Nebraska team did. And although for the first time all in 2024, I thought Dylan Rhule looked like a true freshman at times. This Nebraska defense picked them up in a massive way, fired up to get into this one. Now, before we do, and as always, to the Nebraska fans, appreciate you guys. Y'all know we love talking this program. The amount of support y'all continue to show means the world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, I think we got to start with Tony White. This Nebraska defense showed up in a big way. Big takeaways from what we saw from this Nebraska defense.
I mean, kind of what we've been seeing for the most part, but like kind of up a level. I mean, their ability to get after the pass rusher was probably the big thing for me that stood out because that is what kind of put the nail in the coffin for this Rutgers team. Their ability to make those big game-changing plays on defense, like things they didn't frankly do enough against Illinois, and they made some of those plays for sure. But on some drives, they'd let themselves get chunked down the field, just worked over down the field. I think the ability to make some of those big plays and come up with some real key ones was probably
the two biggest differences between Nebraska's performance on defense against Rutgers versus Illinois is one, you were able to create negative plays. You had 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss in this football game. But I think more importantly, you were lead on third downs. I mean, 2 of 14, 2 of 6 on fourth down. Matt Rhule said this in the press conference. Like Rutgers is a methodical offense. They don't really hit a ton of explosive plays. They are in those third and kind of manageable situations a lot. One, Nebraska did a really good job keeping them out of those manageable distances by creating negative plays. But I think more importantly, when it was third down and when it was time to make a play to get off the football field, they did. I think it starts with the front four too. Dill, we headed into the season in 2024 saying, hey, we know Nash, we know Ty, they're dudes. We were kind of looking for that edge rusher to emerge. And it's been kind of different guys at different times, right? We've seen some really good things from Princeville. James Williams, man. Like when we said this in 2023, is like, hey, that kid flashes some real good pass rush juice. He wasn't a finished product. He probably still isn't a finished product, but you talk about pinning your ears back and just one, his first step off the line of scrimmage is silly. I mean, it is very, very good. You talk about pure pass rusher. We were looking for someone on the edge to step up. James Williams did it in a massive way, and kind of cool to see all the attention that he got after the football game. I'm not entirely sure what's been going on off the football field, but obviously this kid's been through a lot. Really cool to see him have that moment with that Nebraska defense.
Yeah, and also just a big time motor. That's one thing that
Oh,
stands
yeah.
out. Obviously, like he makes some move, like chasing down, like not letting scrambles turn from 1 yard to like 5 or 6. I mean, that type of play. I think he did it in that last drive, maybe second to last drive. Those things that, again, you need that energy, and that is something you've seen with Matt Rhule. You've seen players play like that, so it's not just James Williams. I mean, Nebraska is certainly a team that plays really, really hard, but those type of things I think you saw, and you saw him very consistently in this game, and that is probably why they ultimately won it. Because I thought like in that second half, especially when the offense shut down a little bit, I thought it was like, oh, this does not feel good for Nebraska. I feel like we've been here in this position where they look like they're probably the better team. But then you start to see like the confidence start to wane and the playmaking start to wane. I mean, their defense, they shut the door.
I also thought, and we said this after the Illinois game. I continue to believe this. Like I don't think Riley Van Poppel can redshirt. I think his depth on the inside is too important. I think Elijah Judy, I thought played solid. But outside of Ty and Nash, like that's a big question mark. Like who's given Nebraska good reps on the defensive line, specifically on the inside? I think Riley Van Poppel's that guy. And I know Matt Rhule wants to redshirt guys, get him in the program for 5 years. And I love it. but I feel like you can't do it when it doesn't make sense. And for Riley Van Poppel, I think he played 15 snaps in that football game. Those 15 snaps matter. Like that's kind of the difference between winning these football games and potentially losing football games like he lost against Illinois. That was one of my takeaways. Linebacker play, John Bullock continues. I think he's awesome. I don't think it was great. I don't think it was bad. My bigger takeaway is, say you're right, Dill. Like outside of probably Jamal Banks and Isaiah Naylor, is there a bigger impact transfer portal addition that Matt Rhule made? And this was kind of a wild one, right? It was late in the summer, going into fall camp. They go at Sayer Wright, and we kind of said, like, this kid can play. We saw him play in the Pac-12 for USC, and when he was on the field, like, he's talented. He's a former top 100 national recruit coming out of high school. He's put it together. Dale faced 9 targets, gave up 1 catch. This kid, he's kind of emerging as the best cornerback on this Nebraska team right now, especially with the I should say Tommy Hill not being on the football field.
And Tommy Hill coming back will be huge because they'll need him against teams like Ohio State, teams that are probably a little bit more explosive. But him, Sayer Wright, and then you can probably get Buford into more of a natural spot, whether it's in the nickel or whether it's at safety. I really kind of like where that secondary can be. And obviously the one issue is it's a little thin, but Sayer Wright coming in and being able to pick up big minutes. And now, not just be picking up big minutes. I mean, he's a very established starter. He's certainly cornerback too, in my opinion, when Tommy Hill comes back. But again, I think you can get Buford into a better spot because I don't think he's a great boundary corner.
Yeah, I think
for sure in this game, but he's not that's not his probably natural.
Little handsy at times, but I am totally with you. Like I think Buford kind of got thrusted into that position because of just the lack of depth. I think Matt Rhule added Sayer Wright as like kind of a safety valve guy. Like, hey, we need another body in the cornerback room. Who's available? Like there weren't many cornerbacks available that late in the transfer portal. You take a stab at Sayer Wright. It's paid off, and because he's not only a safety valve now, I think he's like a legit difference maker at that cornerback spot. And I think finally, just give Tony White a ton of credit, ton of different personnel groupings, ton of different looks in the front seven. This Rutgers team runs the football. They ran the football for 76 yards. Like we kind of said it at the top. Like that's how this game wanted to look for Greg Schiano. Like windy, Nebraska struggled throwing the football, which we're going to get to. That's how you wanted it to look if you were Greg Schiano, and Nebraska still being able to win that football game massive. Now, let's get to the offense. Let's start with Dylan. Yeah, obviously not his best football game. Probably the worst game we've seen him play in 2024 in his young career. Looked like a freshman at times. Like you haven't really seen Dylan just make those mistakes that were like kind of jaw dropping. He made that one. You could tell he was. Wasn't very comfortable in that football game, and give Rutgers and Greg Schiano a lot of credit. Like that, that's a historically very good defense. One, I'm not too worried about Dylan. Like I'll lean on the other 5 football games we've seen him play really good in before I just take it and cherry pick from one. I think number 2, Dill, and there's 2 talking points for me. One, Nebraska was clearly in a rut in the second half, and I think that started with kind of going into the wind. You couldn't really throw the football. Rutgers started giving you some of those heavy boxes, which made it hard to run. I'd like to see Nebraska, and I'm getting nitpicky here, but again, Nebraska's got some big goals. We'll get nitpicky here. I would like to see them lean on their difference makers on offense. Like you have a guy in Ja'Cory Barney who, like every time he touches the football, good things seem to happen. And when Nebraska was in that rut, I would like to see him get a little bit more involved, especially against the Rutgers defense that they're really tough in a phone booth. They're maybe not the most, they're not the fastest defense. Would like to see Ja'Cory Barney continue to get touches in space, especially when, things aren't clicking, which is inevitably going to happen during a college football season.
Yeah, I'm surprised they couldn't get to some of that stuff that they got to against Purdue. I mean, some of those end arounds, the reverses, those stuff to get, again, Ja'Cory Barney in space, especially when Rutgers, they really started to kind of compress around the middle.
Yeah.
They kind of knew what Nebraska was doing. We're running between the tackles. That's kind of what we have right now. And I feel like that does open up shot when you have a guy in Ja'Cory Barney or Jalen Lloyd, guys who can legit make plays with their feet. If they get in one-on-one matchups, you're really comfortable with them winning them. Again, maybe Nebraska, I think on the charitable side for Nebraska, you think like, well, the defense is playing really well. We don't need to take any risks. But I mean, again, that game was closer than it probably wanted it to be in a sense. I think you do need to take some risks. You need to be able to get – again, you recruit those guys into this program, haven't had them, it feels like, in a while. You got to let them go.
When you have the opportunity to step on a throat, got to step on that throat and not make this a football game.
I will also say the running backs need to play better football at the end.
That was
I
my
think
second.
they had a lot of like one-on-one opportunities. I thought the offensive line actually was really, really good today.
Yes.
I think the running backs, when they get one-on-ones with corners, safeties, or even linebackers, you gotta win your share of them, and I feel like they won.
Yeah, and Matt Rhule said in the press conference, it just feels like we're one missed tackle away from hitting some big plays, and I do feel like it's just some running backs when they're blocked for 5, they're getting 5. I feel like they're not. If it's blocked for 5, you get 5. You want to see them get 15 when they're blocked for 5. You got a lot of different kind of running backs, and I think you got a talented deep running back room. I would like to see Matt Rhule ride the hot hand more. And like Matt Rhule going back to when we were going into the 2024 season was like, yeah, we got 4 really good running backs. We want to see which one kind of takes the starting spot. And it does seem like it's Dante Dowdle, but at times when you have 4 really good running backs that you trust, like pick up on who's the hot hand. Like I thought at times against Purdue, Emmett Johnson was the hot hand. Would like to see him get a little bit more carries. I thought on Saturday, I thought it was Ramir Johnson. He only got 6 carries. And so, like, if I'm Matt Rhule, I get you want to have a guy that you kind of is your primary back. But when you got 4 that you trust and you like, whatever one's kind of seeing the field and running the football the hardest, go ride with them. And I think Matt Rhule can do a better job of that going forward in terms of finding that running back that's feeling it and let him go take over a football game.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree because Ramir Johnson made some plays in this football game. Obviously, had the screen. That was a big one that he caught. And he had a couple nice runs.
Yes.
I think Dowdle felt like he was just in a rut, and I don't think he
Yeah.
was playing confident. He wasn't making like there were some cutbacks I thought he missed that could have sprung. Thought his ability to kind of like those one-on-one opportunities wasn't making them. So again, when you got a running back playing that way, it's not like you're inept behind him. I kind of wish you maybe did see the touches get spread out a little bit more at least.
Yeah, and it's like Dante Dowdle, yards after contact didn't feel great. And he's your short yardage guy. Like when it's goal line, when it's 3rd and 1, like you obviously want your big dog getting downhill. But on these 1st and 10s, I just wouldn't mind seeing other guys get involved if they're showing that they're having good football games. I thought that was Ramir Johnson. That's nitpicky. This is again an ugly win, but I think if you're Matt Rhule in Nebraska, you're going into a bye week now, going on the road to play a top 25 Indiana team. Like there's a lot to build off of, but I think it's really nice to go into the bye week with a little confidence and saying like, hey, we're going to be in some dogfights in the second half of the season. We're getting a little confident that we can go win some of those dogfights.
Especially having this game where I think it takes a bit of the pressure off in terms of like, I'm not gonna lie, if they lost this, then I think you're staring a 7-5, 6-6 record kind of right in the face a little bit. Because I mean, their back half gets tough for sure. You got teams like Ohio State, like those are really hard games. If you kind of go into that 4-2 versus 5-1, like right now, I think you at least kind of have the sense that there's going to be a much improvement in the record. That Rutgers game, it did feel like a bit of a hinge game in a sense for me, where it was if they don't prove that they can beat Rutgers, well, then you're looking like there's a lot of teams in the back half I don't think you can beat. But this type of game, I think, takes some pressure off. I think they can go in with a bit of different energy, if you will, where you haven't always seen that for Nebraska because they've obviously dropped some games early, and then it starts to snowball a little bit on them.
Agreed. All right, we'll cut it out there. Good time for the bye week for Nebraska. Matt Rhule said in the press conference that we played a lot of football games. We're banged up. Go get healthy. Massive football game against Indiana in 2 weeks, I should say. We'll cut it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.